Just before we get into this video, guys, if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the links are here. And if you also want to support me on Patreon as well and help out my channel, that would be absolutely awesome as well. But let's get on with the video. Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. Now, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail of this video, we are going to be talking about the BBC adaptation of The War of the Worlds. Now, I imagine a lot of you watching this will know what War of the Worlds is. I mean, there's been so many different versions of it. There's been multiple different movies. There's obviously this TV show. There was a famous radio play with Orson Welles. There was also the original novel by H.G. Wells. There's plenty of stuff out there, so I imagine a lot of you know what this is, so I don't really want to go into too much detail. However, essentially, for those who don't know, it's basically an alien invasion. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's one of the first, if not the first, alien invasion story that we ever had. But today we are obviously talking about the latest version, which came out, I believe, a couple of weeks now, and it's been getting mixed reviews, to say the least. Some people think it's alright, some people think it's a load of shit, some would say it's the worst adaptation of War of the Worlds that there has ever been. However, this is what I think. I am very much down the middle on this. Now, I originally was going to do this video as a why you should watch, because I'd recently just finished it and I was just like, wow, that actually wasn't as bad as people have made it out to be. But the more that I've thought about it, and I have rewatched it since as well, I've got to admit I like it less and less the more that I think about it. That's not to say that it's bad, because it isn't. However, it has a number of issues that essentially, for every good thing that this series does, there is a bad thing to balance along with it. So I'm going to start off by talking about the good. Now, first and foremost, the cast. I think they do really well, every single one of them. There's a cast here full of actors that you will recognise and know from other things, and overall I don't think there is a standout performance that is poor. I think everybody does a relatively good job with what they are given. The entire thing is cast well. Everybody plays the role that they need to, and they do it adequately, I suppose. I don't want to say adequately, because that means, you know, just good enough, because a lot of them are pretty decent performances, but whilst they are good performances, that's about it. But it is a positive. The cast in this is strong. Second thing, cinematography. This thing is fucking gorgeous. I can't even lie. This is one of the prettiest TV shows that I've seen probably this year. And I mean, I haven't watched everything from this year, but all the stuff that I have watched, this is one of the nicest looking. From the special effects to the way that it's shot, everything about how this series looks is absolutely fantastic. When it needs to be creepy, it is shot perfectly. When it needs to be action-packed, it does that brilliantly. When it needs to be just awe-inspiring, you know, some of the shots in this are really well done, and somebody really thought hard about how they wanted to actually present this thing. Because when you've got a story like this, which is an alien invasion, you really want to get the sense of dread, you want to get the sense of scale, because these things are so huge. When you obviously see the aftermath of the alien invasion, you want to see in all of its glory, or in this case all its devastation, how civilization would look, and it looks amazing. There's not a single shot in this entire thing where I'm like, that was a bit crap. This thing is stunning, absolutely stunning, and to be fair, it's probably the best thing about it. Sort of kind of going on the same line as well, this has a plethora of different things that it does incredibly well. So like I mentioned then, when it's action packed, I think the action when it happens is done incredibly well. When people are just getting decimated and wiped out and just places are getting fucking totaled, it's really well done. There's some moments in this as well that are really creepy and claustrophobic, and again you've got this sense of dread that you're just like, oh. There's a moment in, I think, episode 3 where it's a moment that you can see coming. You can see it coming from a mile off, but when it happens it still makes you shudder and it still makes you go, whoa. Should I talk about spoilers in this? Look, if you haven't watched it already, spoilers are going to happen from this point onwards. So 3, 2, 1, here we go. So basically the shot that I'm referring to is in third episode, because it's only a 3-part series. All of the characters that we are with at the minute are in this house, and the aliens have left their tripods and they're sort of skulking around the house. There's a moment where the little girl that they're with goes back to grab their teddy bear so they can sneak out, and obviously the little girl has gone back, everyone else is sort of waiting to go. They look round and you see one of the Martians hanging from the ceiling, and it just jumps down and grabs her and kills her instantly. That moment is so predictable and it is so cliche at this point, I'm not even going to deny it, but because it's done so well, and it's not even a moment that you can really sit and absorb, because the episode, rightly so, just brushes over it because it's like, fuck, we've got to get out of it. That moment is so well done, because I've got a thing about spiders. I fucking hate them. And a moment like that, because the spider-esque, even though they've only got like 3 legs, which is still weird, but because it's sort of hanging there and then just leaps at this little girl, it's awful. But in a good way. When it needs to be slow and it needs to be building tension, it's also very good at that. Again, I think it is in episode 3 where they're in the house and this old woman gets cornered and all the other characters are basically watching helplessly at this old woman sort of come to and then realise that she's about to get murdered and eaten by this alien that just stabs her and I assume drains her blood. They don't really explain what they do, but they're eating her, essentially. And you don't even see the Martian in full. And it's stuff like that that this series does incredibly well. However, whilst I will say that it does a lot of things right, it also does a lot of things wrong. And I think the 2 main things that I would say this series does wrong is its pacing and its overall writing. Now, first and foremost, the pacing. There are certain moments in this where it genuinely feels like that moment could have been half its length. And it's really frustrating because some of those moments that are in there feel like they shouldn't be there. It almost feels like this could have been a 2-part series and they just drew the entire thing out for an extra hour just because it was commissioned as 3 and they were just like, well, we'll just throw that in there then. So for example, the 3rd episode is essentially revealing one thing that you could have done in like 10-15 minutes. Again, I did say that there were spoilers, so fuck it. Throughout the entire thing there are sort of flash forwards, so it's showing you pre-invasion, during the invasion, and then the aftermath of the invasion, and it doesn't necessarily tell you these things in order. I mean, obviously the pre and during, that sort of happens as is, but then it cuts every now and again back and forth to the future, and the implication that you get early on is that I can't remember any of the characters' names. The female lead has a child and she's looking for her partner, who is the main male character. However, what you learn in the last episode is that she's never actually going to find him because he's dead and he got eaten by a Martian. He sacrificed himself so she could survive because it was already established that she was pregnant, so he was just like, right, okay, I need to buy you time, you just go, I'll distract it. But the way that they do that, it's almost like the 3rd episode is to tell you what I've just told you, and it didn't need to be an hour. Like, again, there are moments in the 3rd episode, like the kid getting attacked or the old woman getting murdered and all this sort of stuff. That stuff is handled really well, but there's a lot of stuff that is so drawn out and so unnecessary that you really could have chopped out a good hour, maybe not totally an hour, maybe like 50 minutes worth of stuff. And I think rewatching the 3rd episode again, it made me realise that, because the first time I was like, oh wow, that's actually really sad. But then the 3rd time I was like, you didn't need that long to tell me all of this. And again, that does sort of play into the writing. Now, a lot of the writing in terms of the dialogue and stuff is fine, but it's the way that the story goes about itself, if that makes sense. There's a lot of stuff where, again, sort of like with the pacing, it's unnecessary stuff. And it feels like a lot of the unnecessary stuff was left in, and a lot of the necessary stuff, or just stuff that I personally wanted to see more of, was taken out. So for example, there is a scene, I think in the 2nd episode, where we're in London and the minister is talking about, you know, how this is not a big deal, it's been over exaggerated, whatever's happening, we're British, we can fight it, it's fine. And then at that moment, a tripod comes in and starts to decimate London. But then it just stops. Not the actual tripod itself, the actual thing stops. It doesn't show you London getting decimated anymore, and it's a bit like, show me that. show me more of that. I understand that you want this, similar to the original novel, you want it to be more of a personal story. You want it to follow these two main characters and how they see things of this invasion, because obviously you're not going to cut around the world to New York and Paris and Manchester and Glasgow and Rome and all these different places and see the invasion going on, and I'm okay with that, I'm fine with that, but at least when our characters are there, show us what they see. It just kind of feels like, oh, tripod's here, next minute they're on a beach and they're escaping. I mean, to be fair, the beach sequence is actually pretty fucking good, I must admit. But again, I wanted to see more of stuff like that. And now I'll talk about the main thing that I think a lot of people have issue with. Now, the original novel, you could argue, but it's probably fact at this point, it's basically a metaphor for I can't fucking say this word. I knew going into this review I couldn't say it. Colonization. Fuck, second time, yes. I'm leaving all of that in because I want you to realise how proud of myself I actually am. So it's basically about that. And there's a moment in this where the main character, they have like a little bit of a downtime moment, and he just says, is this our fault? Is this the fault of the Englishman? We're being repaid essentially for what we did. You know, we'll go to a tribe in a different country in the jungle and we will decimate their land and build it in our image. And the message behind it is a fair one. And I don't think that, you know, some people say that, oh, it's PC gone mad. It's what the original fucking book is based off of. So as much as I'm not like Team Woke, I'm not like that. But I can appreciate that stuff, you know, the political stuff, when it's necessary. And I think in this, it kind of is, but it's how you go about it. And I think it's so, I don't even know how to describe it, it's just so poorly done. And it's a moment that just sort of happens, and once he sort of said what he needs to say, that's it. It doesn't really feel like this entire thing was like a metaphor for it, like I imagine the original one was. This just kind of feels like, well, the original book is about this, so what we'll do is we'll have him physically say it, and then we won't really address it. That to me was a bit poor, because I feel like they could have had a good angle to go with there, but I suppose it was quite a narcissistic and self-indulgent moment when it really didn't need to be. There's a lot more stuff that I could go into about this, but to be honest, I think I've given a sort of general gist on the entire thing. Like, again, like I said at the top of this review, it has its good points, but for every good point there's a negative to counterbalance it. And I think if you like the War of the Worlds, you will probably hate this, but if, like me, you sort of know of it, but you're not really a fanboy of it, or, you know, someone who is properly invested in it, then I reckon you might enjoy it. I reckon you'll probably be frustrated with it in places, but some of the great stuff that you find in this, you can truly appreciate. It's just a shame that the entire thing doesn't quite work. I feel like you need to trim the fat on this. You need to, well, not you physically, but, you know, whoever was behind this needed to trim the fat, needed to just tighten it up a little bit, you know, explore themes better, show us more things, and I think then it could have worked. There's a really great idea here, and there's a really great story here, because we've seen it in other media. It's just in this version doesn't quite get there. But in the comments, guys, let me know what you think. Did you watch the War of the Worlds? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Indifferent? Whatever it is, you let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description below, as always. And if you would follow me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. Colonization. Why can't I fucking say it? Why can't I say it? Colonize. I'm gonna punch myself in the fucking head.